In 1822, Martin's Act, the world's first piece of legislation for animal welfare, was passed in Parliament, making it illegal to wantonly and cruelly beat or ill-treat any horse, mare, gelding, mule, ass, cow, heifer, steer, sheep or other cattle. What you were allowed to ill-treat, though, if you felt like it, is one of these. It wasn't for another 20 years that similar legislation to protect children was made law. In fact, for the price of a horse like this in 1825, you could purchase 3 of these from an orphanage. By the beginning of the 19th century, the empire was growing, the Industrial Revolution was at its height, and the demand for labour was insatiable. A shortage of workers meant that factory owners decided to buy children from orphanages and workhouses for even cheaper labour.
Conditions in the mills are terrible. This is a late 19th century cotton mill, and it can get over 120 decibels in here. That's enough to seriously damage your health. Some of the workers had to learn to lip read, and some of them even became permanently deaf from working in places like this.
The mill owners used to treat children as their effective slaves, often putting them in manacles to stop them running away. A girl called Sarah Carpenter, who worked in the Derbyshire mills, described her brutal existence.
The master started beating me with a stick over the head till it was full of lumps and bled. My head was so bad that I could not sleep for a long time, and I've never been a sound sleeper since. There was a young woman, Sarah Goodling, who was poorly, and so she stopped her machine. James Birch, the overlooker, knocked her to the floor. She got up as well as she could. He knocked her down again. Then she was carried to the apprentice house. Her bedfellow found her dead in bed. There was another called Mary. She knocked her food can down on the floor. The master, Mr. Newton, kicked her where he knocked it and caused her to wear away till she died. There was another, Caroline Thompson. They beat her till she went out of her mind.
The smallest children were employed as what were called scavengers. What they had to do was to pick up the spare pieces of cotton from the floor under the machines. But the machines were on, and the children were terrified, half choking on the dust and crawling just inches away from fast, noisy machinery. Some children were scalped when their hair was caught in the machines. Their fingers, their hands, and their limbs were regularly crushed. In 1842, a German visitor wrote that he had seen so many people in the streets of Manchester without arms and legs that it was like living in the midst of an army that had just returned from a campaign.
Children were literally treated as expendable commodities, easy to control and cheap to replace. Eventually, in 1832, an MP, Michael Sadler, introduced a bill in Parliament proposing a 10-hour working day for children under 18. But the bill failed, largely due to opposition from mill-owning MPs, and the brutal treatment of children continued for almost half a century. Children under 10 weren't finally banned from working in factories until 1878.
Today, quite rightfully, we're horrified at the way children were treated during the Industrial Revolution. But what is it about us that we're still convinced that violence is the only way of keeping children under control? Nowadays, it's wrong to hit another man or beat our wives, but when it comes to kids, somehow it seems all right. Because there is one part of our violent, murky past which many of us would like to return to.